All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Let us begin an incredible daf ahead of us today. I want to begin by thanking our sponsors, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors, Yoel and Sarah Kelman, for dedicating all of the Shiurim and Drashos this month. Our Daf Yomi sponsors, anonymous sponsor for the Schos of Refuah Shalema, for Dr. Aviva Weisbard, Ruchama Aviva Bas Sheina Chana, as well as for the Refuah Shalema of Rachel Yehudis Bas Tova Gittel. Daf Yomi sponsors Mr. and Mrs. Baruch and Bracha Rifkin, in memory of Bracha's mother, Crandall Bas Label, whose yahrzeit is today. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah. Those who require a refuah should have one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. Both with that, let us begin. Incredible daf. Today's daf is Tzadik Vav. Tzadik Vav. We are picking up on Tzadik Hey Amud Beis. So we'll say, so we left, just to reorient ourselves a little bit, we started a really exciting new parak yesterday about Hamotzei Tefillin. Whoever thought Hamotzei Tefillin, so exciting. So we'll say, I find Tefillin out on Shabbos, so the Shaila is again, obviously no Eruv. How do I go ahead and get those Tefillin back? I don't want to leave them there because again, that will compromise the dignity, the Kedusha of the Tefillin. So how do I get them back? So we saw a fundamental machlokes in the Mishnah. Tanakama said, Machnisin Zug Zug. You could wear them in one pair at a time. Rabbi Gamliel said, Shnayim Shnayim. You can go ahead and wear them in two pairs at a time. So the beginning of the Gemara spoke about the position of the Tanakama. But now also we're focusing now on the position of Rabbi Gamliel. So where does Rabbi Gamliel, where does he come up with this idea, ultimately again, of wearing them in two pairs at a time? We'll say, I understand one pair. One pair is, according, what's the logic of the Tanakama? We identify the Tanakama of the Mishnah as quite possibly who? Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is the one who allows you to go ahead and if you want to save clothing from a fire, what does he allow you to do? Put on multiple layers. Multiple layers. Why? Because again, that's the normal derech levisha. People layer clothing. That's normal. So too again, when saving tefillin, you can wear tefillin in a normative fashion. What's the normal fashion for wearing tefillin? Ultimately, again, one pair at a time. One pair at a time. So I understand. What's Rabbi Gamliel's pshat? Right? Where does Rabbi Gamliel come up with two pairs at a time? So we left off. Let's pick up Amar of Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. All right, it's a lot of lines off from the bottom. It's about the 22 lines off from the bottom, we'll say. It goes quickly. So Amar of Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Makom yesh berosh lahaniach bo shtei tefillin. So we'll say, so again, because Rabbi Gamliel holds, like Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, who holds that in fact Rabbi was saying, you could fit, there is place on the head. We'll discuss this in just a moment. There's makom on the rosh for two shal roshes. For two shal roshes. So therefore we'll say Rabbi Gamliel's shita is that there is enough space to wear two pairs of tefillin properly. Two pairs of tefillin properly. So because of that, one can make the argument that two pairs of tefillin is also called normative derech levisha. So the Gemara says, Hani chadarosh, that works fine with the shal rosh. However, the yad ma'ikal. What about the shal yad? Kid Rafuna. Rafuna. Listen to this, Rabbi say. So Rafuna is like this. Pamim sha'adam bamin asad. Rabbi say this is incredible. Listen to this. Sometimes a person is working in the field. He's coming home from the field. The chavilasa arosho, and he has a bundle on his head. A bundle on his head. Umasalkan merosho v'koshran bizrao. We'll say, what does he do? He takes off his shalrosh and he wraps his shalrosh around his arm. He doesn't want to wear the package on top of his shoulders, so he wraps it around his arms. We'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that it's normal to have two things wrapped around your yad. That's a normal thing. So therefore, again, that's why Rabbi Gamliel allows for two pairs. So the Gemara says, Eimar da'amar Rav Huna shlo yinak b'derech bizayon. So also when Rav Huna says this, Rav Huna is just saying, not that this is a normative form of wearing tefillin, but rather this is the way you save the shalrosh from being degraded. Roi mi amar. Does he actually say that this is a normal way to wear tefillin? So we'll say, I just want to point something out about that case. So we'll say, listen to that case for just a moment. The guy's coming back from the field, and he's wearing his tefillin. He takes off his shalrosh, ultimately again to wrap it around. So we'll say, which means that when he was working in the field, what was he doing? He was wearing his tefillin. I will say, you understand like the incredible metaphor in that? You got to wear your tefillin throughout the day. Not for us literally, but at least metaphorically. Or as we'll say, Kedusha has to be with you whatever you do. The problem so often in life is that we bifurcate holiness, right? Holiness applies over here. We do like a Kriyas Yamsuf with Kedusha, right? Holiness over here, Chol over here. Kodesh over here, Chol over here. It's not true. The truth is, no matter what you do in life, we often think that A profession is a p'tur, right, from Kedusha. If you learn all day, or if you're in Klei Kodesh, then you have Kedusha. But if you're a professional, no, it's not true. See, even if you're an agrarian, you're a laborer, you wear your tefillin all day. Your Kedusha has to follow you into every single thing that you do. Pretty incredible. So the Gemara says, El Gidon Rav Shul Bar Yitzchak, Makom yesh berosh sheroy la'aniach bo shtei tefillin. So we'll say, so now the Gemara says, you're right. Rather we go back, Rabbi Gamliel holds like Rav Shul Bar Yitzchak. Rav Shul Bar Yitzchak holds that I will say there are in fact there's enough space on the head for the proper placement of two shell roshes. Hachanami yesh makom biad misharoy lahaniach bo shtei tefillin. So it's Rabbi say on the bicep, on the arm, there is enough placement, there's enough space there for the proper placement of two pairs of tefillin. So we'll say, let's analyze. Tana de Nasha al yadcha. When the pasuk says you place tefillin on your hand, zuki bores. This refers to the bicep. Bicep, so again, what Shmuel Yisrael was saying is if you look at the makom of the bicep, then what? There's enough space to put on there two pairs of tefillin. And obviously, that presupposes that what? That you have smaller pairs of tefillin, right? That's why you'll see there are some of our brethren, Bnei Sfarad, who wear two pairs of tefillin at the same time. And if you notice again, they're very small pairs of tefillin. So you could do it. There's enough space on the bicep, and there's enough space ultimately again on the rosh. So the Gemara says, so the Gemara says, what about wearing the tefillin between your eyes? So where does that go? Zu kad kad. Both say this is the kad kad. What's the kad kad? So both say, where do you put your shorosh? You put your shorosh at the soft spot of the skull. So I will say between your hairline, I don't know why I'm pointing to, right? So I'll say, right, between one's hairline and between the soft spot on the skull. I'll say that's the placement for the shorosh. So the back of the shorosh should hit what is the soft spot of the skull and goes forward. So that really what it is the front of the shorosh is by the hairline, the back of the shorosh, or the back of the base of the shorosh, is by the soft spot of the skull. So again, with a small pair of tefillin, there's enough place on the head to go ahead and place two pairs. So we'll say that seems to be the sheet of Rabbi Gamliel. So in fact, interestingly enough, Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Meir and the Tanna Kama are not arguing all that much. They're both agreeing that you could wear pairs of tefillin in. It's just that the Tanna Kama holds it's only normal to wear two pairs of tefillin. Rabbi Gamliel holds, but you could fit. Rabbi Meir holds it's normal to wear one pair of tefillin, and therefore you could wear it in. Rabbi Gamliel holds, but you could fit two pairs of tefillin, normal derech lavisha, therefore you could do that. Good, says the Gemara. Lema b'Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak kademiflagi. Both say, so they must be arguing about Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. The Tanna Kama, less later, Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. So remember again, Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak is the opinion who holds that you could wear two pairs of tefillin on your head and on your yad normally. So the Tanna Kama does not hold of this. Rabbi Gamliel islay, the Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Rabbi Gamliel holds of him, to which the Gemara says, lo, D'chuli alma is l'hud Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak. No, both say everybody agrees. Everybody agrees that on a technical level, there is enough room, both on the rosh and on the yad, to wear two pairs of tefillin with proper placement. The hacha, listen to this, Rabbi, say, here we go, we're going to get into the kishkas of the sugya. B'Shabbos zman tefillin kamiflagi. Rabbi, so what they are arguing about is there a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos or not? That's the fundamental machlokes. The Tanna Kama savar, Shabbos zman tefillin hu. Tanna Kama holds that Shabbos is zman tefillin, and therefore what Rabbi say, therefore again, because Shabbos is zman tefillin, you have to wear, if you want to carry in the tefillin, you can, but you have to wear them in a normative fashion. And the normative fashion, therefore, is one pair. And Rabbi say, not only that, but interestingly enough, what you're going to get into issue is as follows. According to Tanna Kama, because there's a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos, if you wear two pairs of tefillin, you may in fact be in violation of Bal Tosif, adding on to the mitzvah. So since there is a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos, wearing more than one pair could be a problem of Bal Tosif. Rabbi Gamliel savar, both say that's Rashi. You'll see Rashi. Rashi has two gears sa'os over here. Rashi says, if you look at the last three lines of Rashi on the daf, Vanirali dahachi garsinan tanakama savar mitzvahs in srichos kavana ulekoli alma tachshitein. Actually, I'm sorry, that's not it. Sorry. The Gemara Rabbi Gamliel savar Shabbos lav zman tefillin. Then Rabbi Gamliel holds that no, Shabbos is not zman tefillin. So therefore, we'll say, what's the status of wearing tefillin according to Rabbi Gamliel? It's just a lavush. It's just a garment. So as long as you can wear a garment in a normal fashion, and Rabbi Gamliel says you could wear up to 2 pairs of tefillin, quote unquote, normally. Therefore, you could transport it in. We'll say, so again, we're going to come back to that, I will say, by the way, because this discussion about whether or not there is a mitzvah to wear tefillin on Shabbos drives so much of this sugya. So we're going to see this more on Amud Aleph. We'll say the other possibility is Tichuli Alba Shabbos Zman Tefillin. Who will say the other possibility is as follows. Everyone agrees that halacha l'maisa Shabbos, there is a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos. V'hacha, here we go. We'll say the mitzvos tzrichos kavana kamiflagi. We'll say here's the machlokes. Do mitzvos require kavana? Tana Kama savar lot says boy kavana. The Tana Kama holds that what? In order to fulfill the mitzvah, you have to have kavana. Rabbi Gamliel savar lo boy kavana. Rabbi Gamliel says you don't need kavana. So we'll say, what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. We'll say, Tana Kama savar mitzvos tzrichos kavana. Rashi says, Sha'osa mitzvah tzarch she'echavin ba, hilchach zug echad in tfeilo, timechavin lemitzvah ika af ba'ika bal tosif bechad. So we'll say, listen to this. So here's the problem. According to this approach, everybody agrees that Shabbos is a zman for tefillin. Okay? And everybody agrees that what? That mitzvos tzrichos kavana, which is that the way for you to go ahead and transport the tefillin from outside in is to put your tefillin on and have kavana for the mitzvah. Because ultimately, again, that's what allows you to wear the tefillin in as a form of mitzvah. But if you're wearing 2 pairs, what happens? Then halacha l'maisa, you're in violation of Bal Tosif. Conversely, Rabbi Gamliel holds that mitzvos don't require kavana. So because they don't require kavana, ultimately, again, you could wear 2 pairs of tefillin in. You could just have it in mind as a lavush, top of tzadik vav. The other possibility is everybody agrees that you do not require kavana in order to fulfill a mitzvah. We'll say here the machlokes Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Meir, the Tana Kama, is when are you in violation of Bal Tosif? The Bal Tosif is you are not allowed to add on to mitzvahs. So says the Gemara, the Tana Kama savar la'avar mishum Bal Tosif lo bai kavana. Tana Kama also said that even without kavana, you can go ahead and be in violation of Bal Tosif. Right? So we'll say, so just simply putting on 2 pairs of tefillin, by definition, is in violation of Bal Tosif. Even without any explicit kavana, that the second pair should be for the mitzvah. Rabbi Gamliel savar la'avar mishum Bal Tosif by kavana. And Rabbi Gamliel holds no. They both say, in order to go ahead and be in violation of Bal Tosif, what do you have to do? You have to go ahead and have in mind that you're wearing that second pair for the sake of the mitzvah of tefillin. But according to Rabbi Gamliel, for example, if you were to put on pair 1, l'shem mitzvahs tefillin, and then you were to put on pair 2 with no kavana, that would not be Bal Tosif. So we'll say Rabbi Meir the Tana Kama says you can't wear 2 pairs of tefillin because even without kavana for the second pair, it's automatically Bal Tosif. Rabbi Gamliel says no, it's only Bal Tosif if you mamish have kavana that the second pair ultimately again should be the mitzvah. And we'll say the other possibility is if you hold that everyone agrees that there's a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos, then I will say ultimately again, you don't need kavana to go and be over on Bal Tosif, and you don't need kavana to be over. You don't need kavana ultimately to be yotze the mitzvah. V'hacha bela'avor shelo bizmano kamiflagi. And I will say here the machlokes is, can you be over on Bal Tosif ultimately again in a mitzvah shelo bizmano? When a mitzvah is not performed, ultimately, again, in its appropriate time. Tana Kama savar lo by kavana. The Tana Kama holds that it doesn't require kavana. Rabbi Gamliel savar la'avar shelo bizmano by kavana. Okay. Ihachi l'Rabbi Meir zug echad namilo. We'll say if that's the case, that according to Rabbi Meir, you shouldn't even be able to wear 1 pair of tefillin in. Va'od, furthermore, hayashin b'shmini b'sukkah yilokeh. If you sleep in the sukkah, ultimately again on Shmini Atzeres, I will say. So remember again, this is Shmini Atzeres in Eretz Yisrael. Shmini Atzeres in Eretz Yisrael, where again, it's not sukkahs, not by us, but Shmini Atzeres, which is Sveika Diyoma. But in Eretz Yisrael, where Shmini Atzeres is absolutely not sukkahs, it's a Yom Tiv unto itself. If you sleep in the sukkah, so again, which is an act technically of Bal Tosif with no kavana, because I'm sleeping, you should get malchus. Ela mechabarta kiddushanin meikara. So we'll say the Gemara throws out everything we just did and says no. Let's go back. Let's go back to basics. The machlokes between Rabbi Gamliel and the Tana Kama, who we've identified as Rabbi Meir, is a very simple machlokes. It's a machlokes about the shita about whether or not Look at Rashi. Mechavarti Keshem Yikara b'Shabbos man v'lav zman tefillin k'mifka. Both say the machlokes between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Meir is a yesodistic machlokes. Is Shabbos, is there a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos or not? That's the machlokes. Tanna Kama holds there is a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos. That's Tanna Kama holds. Therefore, the Tanna Kama will say if you want to transport tefillin, how do you transport them? One pair at a time. Why? Because they both say since the mitzvah of tefillin applies on Shabbos, and since the way you fulfill the mitzvah is one pair at a time, therefore you could wear it in the normal performance of the mitzvah. That you could do. Rabbi Gamliel holds there is no mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos. And therefore, Rabbi said, how can you transport tefillin on Shabbos? As a levush, as a garment. And as a garment, what can you do? Just right as a garment, you could wear up to 2 pairs of tefillin in a normal fashion. That could be done. There's enough space on the head, enough space on the yad, in order to wear the tefillin in a normal fashion. Therefore, you could transport this. So we'll say the Gemara is now assuming that is at the root of the machlokes. Is there a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos? I will say, I'll point out, we went through this quickly, but there's a lot of profound yisodos over here. I will say, just in general, we're not going to get into it now, but the sugi of Baal Tosef is actually quite fascinating, because I will say, this notion of performing a mitzvah when you're not chayiv, for that, or going ahead and even wearing 2 pairs of tefillin, that's not the typical example of Baal Tosef. When Rashi, for example, on Chumash, gives an example of Baal Tosef, what does he give? He gives the example of putting a 5th parsha in your tefillin, or adding in an additional min to your lulav and esser. I want to take hadassim, aravas, and tulips. That's Baal Tosef. So I just want to point out it's fascinating. The general idea of Baal Tosef is you add on something to the actual essence of the mitzvah, as opposed to performing 2 of the same mitzvah twice. Like 2 pairs of tefillin would not be the typical example of Baal Tosef. But okay, in any event, that's not our primary subject. So we'll say back to Tanna Kama, Rabbi Gamliel. Let's remain focused. Their machlokes is there a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos or not? So here we go. We'll say this is great. Uman Shabbos le Shabbos man tefillin. So we'll say almost like this Gemara. This is the reward for making it almost to the end of Eruvin, right? They'll say this is mamish. This is the schar. This is the Ribono Shalom telling us, I'm so proud you kept showing up and you're here. How many, right? Let's remember those who we have lost along the journey, right? Many have fallen by the wayside. So the Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara says, Uman Shamis le Shabbos as man tefillin. So I'll say ultimately again, so who is the opinion that holds that there's a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos? Who is that? I'll say, here we go, Rabbi Akiva. It's Rabbi Akiva. This Sanya, here we go. We'll say, this is the Gemara. V'shamarta zachuka azos l'mo adam yamim yamima. We'll say, and I literally translated, you will keep this statute in its appointed time, miyamim yamima. Literally again, from day to days, or from days amongst days. So the Gemara darshans are both saying, now we're going to see the Gemara applies this pasuk to tefillin. Now, why is this pasuk applied to tefillin? If you look at Rashi says, V'shamarta sachuka beparshas kadeshli ksiv. So both say, this is from the pasuk of kadeshli called Bechar, right? So interestingly enough, V'hi achos midalet parshas shel tefillin. So both say, this particular pasuk is actually not talking about tefillin, but it happens to be one of the parshas which is included in tefillin. So because of that, the Gemara is understanding that we could refer it back to tefillin. So the pasuk, you shall keep this statute, and how the Gemara is darshaning, the statute that's being referred to over here is tefillin. So what does it teach us? Yamim v'lo leilos. So first of all, it teaches us, miyamim yamima teaches us, the mitzvah of tefillin only applies by day and not by night. Furthermore, we'll say miyamim yamima means from days amongst days. V'lo kol yamim teaches us that tefillin doesn't even apply every day. So number one, Yamim teaches me, Yamim v'lo leilos, tefillin only applies by day, not by night. And furthermore, mi Yamim Yamima, it doesn't even apply every day. Which day is there no mitzvah of tefillin? Shabbos and Yom Tov. Did Rabbi Yossi Aglili? Rabbi Akiva Omer, lo ne'amar chuka zu el inyan Pesach bilvad. So I'll say, Rabbi Akiva says, but 1 second, the chuka that we're referring to over here is Karban Pesach, right? It's not tefillin. So what's going on? Ve'ala hadisnan, ha-Pesach v'amila mitzvahs aseh. So I'll say, but yet that which we learned, that Pesach and Milah are a positive commandment, it must not be in accordance with Rabbi Akiva. Why? Dig Rabbi Akiva, keva demukila Pesach, lav nami ika. Because we'll say, according to Rabbi Akiva, both Karban Pesach and Mila should not only be a positive commandment, but should also have a lo sase, a prohibition associated with it. Now, why is that? We'll say, here we go. Kid Rabbi Avin Rabbi Eloi. The Amr Rabbi Avin Amr Rabbi Eloi, Chomakum Shenamar Hishamar Pen Va'al Eno Ela Below Sase. Because also, whenever you see these words, Hishamar, Pen, and Al, that ultimately again refers to a lo. That means that there's a lav involved. The pasuk in question over here is Vishamarta. Rabbi Akiva saying refers to the Karban Pesach. If that's the case, Karban Pesach, it should not only have an asay, but it should also have a lav associated with it. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva, Hishamar de lav, Hishamar de asay. I will say again, it's true that these four words could have a connotation of a lav, but only when mentioned in the context of a prohibition. But if mentioned in the context of a positive commandment, they don't refer to a lav. Fine. So the Gemara will say, so for Sav Rabbi Akiva's man tefillinu. So now you just, I will say, we're going a little bit back and forth over here because we just wanted to say, the Gemara started out by saying that who is the opinion who holds that Shabbos is the Zman Tefillin? It's Rabbi Akiva. Now we just got finished saying that Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara quotes a pasuk that teaches us that the mitzvah of Tefillin doesn't apply by Shabbos. Rabbi Akiva comes along and he says, no, that pasuk is not referring to Tefillin, it's referring to Pesach. So we'll say, which makes it sound like that Rabbi Akiva holds that there is a mitzvah of Tefillin on Shabbos. So what's going on? V'sav Rabbi Akiva, Shabbos man Tefillinu. Does Rabbi Akiva actually hold that there's a mitzvah of Tefillin on Shabbos? V'atanya, we learned, here we go. Rabbi Akiva, Omer, Yachol Adam Yaniach Tefillin B'Shvas Yom Tovim. You might have thought that a person should put on Tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Talmud Lomar, V'haya lecha la'os al yadcha. So we'll say, the pasuk says, it will be a sign on your hand. So we'll say, Tefillin is an os. It's a sign of the covenant between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbi Akiva darshans, Misha tzrichin os, you only put tefillin on a day which requires a covenantal sign. However, Yatsu Elu, Shabbos and Yom Tov do not require tefillin, shehein gufan os, because Shabbos and Yom Tov themselves are a covenantal sign. So we'll say this is the sheet of Rabbi Akiva, that halacha l'maisa, again, we'll see that halacha l'maisa, which is really quite fascinating, that Shabbos and Yom Tov do not require tefillin, because again, the entire purpose of tefillin is in os vayala os al yadcha. Shabbos and Yom Tov are their own os, they're their own covenantal sign. Therefore, no tefillin Shabbos Yom Tov. Ella haytanu. Rather, I both say there must be a different tana. Disanya haneyar balayla. Both listen to this case. Someone is awake all night. Ratza choletz ratza maniach de Rabbi Nasan. So we'll say Rabbi Nasan holds that. Let's say you're awake all night. If you are wearing your tefillin by day into the night, you could go ahead and keep them on, or you could take them off. Furthermore, again, Ratza Maniach, even if you want to put on tefillin lechatchila at night, you are permitted to do this. Divrei Rabbi Nasan. This is Rabbi Nasan, right? So we'll say Rabbi Nasan clearly holding that nighttime is the zman for tefillin as well. Yonasan Akitoni Omer in manichin balayla. So we'll say ultimately, Yonasan Akitoni says, listen, if you're wearing your tefillin by day and you wear it into night, ultimately again you could keep it on, but you cannot put on your tefillin lechatchila at night. So midalayla latanakama zman tefillin, Shabbos nami zman tefillin. Now we are assuming that if that Laila and Shabbos are treated together, right? Nighttime and Shabbos are treated together. And we'll say why? Because ultimately, again, remember the exemption from nighttime would be learned out from where? Miyamim yamima, right? Yamim velo leilos, and then we also darshan yamim velo kol yamim. So it's the same drasha. So therefore, we would assume that if you hold there's no mitzvah of tefillin at night, that you would also hold that there's no mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos. To which the Gemara says, maybe not. Dilmas really Laila's man tefillinu. Shabbos not tefillin. Maybe not. As much as I understand that the drasha is linked, it's really learned out from the same phrase. Maybe the Tanakama doesn't hold that they're linked together, and maybe Einachinami you could hold that there's no mitzvah of tefillin by night, but there is a mitzvah of tefillin by Shabbos. To which the Gemara says, Dilmas really Laila zman tefillinu. Shabbos not tefillinu. Da'asham inu Rabbi Akiva, because I will say we know Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva holds Da'amar Laila zman tefillinu. Shabbos loves zman tefillinu. Wow! I will say here it is. You want to know the sheet of Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva holds that halacha l'maisa Laila. You could wear tefillin at night. Laila is zman tefillin, but ultimately, again, Shabbos is not zman tefillin. I will say where Rabbi Akiva gets that from, we're going to have to see. Ela haitana. Rather, the Gemara says, you're right, here's the Tana. We'll say this is incredible. Desanya. Michal bas kushi haisa maneches tefillin v'lo michu b'chachamim. So Michal bas Kushi, Michal was a woman, right? The daughter of Kushi. She used to put on tefillin. I want to pshingle over there, right? So listen to this. So Rashi says over here, who's Bas Kushi? Listen to this. So Rashi says, Bas Shaul. This is fascinating. This is Michal, the daughter of Shaul. Both say this was David HaMelech's wife. David HaMelech's, right? So listen to this. So Michal Bas Shaul, Kedichsiv al divrei Kush ben Yemini, Dahainu Shaul Kenamrina be'elu begachim. Both say the Gemara says elu begachim. Why do they call Shaul Kushi? Because the Gemara says something amazing. Just like a Kushi, right, is easily distinguishable by the color of his skin, so too Shaul was easily distinguishable by the nature of his actions. In other words, he stood out. He stood out. So both say it's in it. So it was a compliment to him. So they used to call him Michal bas Kushi. So they called Shaul. Shaul was just someone who was so easily recognizable as a result of his good deeds. So Michal used to put on tefillin, v'lo michu b'chachamim, and the rabbis did not object to her practice. Now look at Rashi. V'lo michu b'chachamim, davi kitosefes al divrei Torah, shepatra nashem mimitzvos aseh shehazman grama. Now we're going to analyze this in just a moment. But the Gemara's remarking over here is that Michal put on tefillin, that's Aleph, and the rabbis didn't object to her practice. Similarly, Ishto shel Yonah, Yonah's wife. Who's Yonah? Rashi says Yonah ben Amitai. This is Yonah of Sefer Yonah, right? Yonah's wife, Haisa Ola L'Regel. She used to go on Aliyah L'Regel, right? The pilgrimage festival. But the pilgrimage to Yerushalayim, she would go, and furthermore, v'lo michu b'chachamim. And the Chachamim did not object to this practice. I want to point out to you, what does that mean? The Pashtas, it was like a lot of women would go up to Yerushalayim. So apparently it was clear that her kavanah was to fulfill the mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel. And the Chachamim they didn't object to this practice. So let's analyze. So we'll say, here we go. Midelo michu b'chachamim. Now we're focusing more on Michal bas Shaul. Midelo michu b'chachamim, alma kasavri mitzvos aseh shalo azman gramahi. So both say, now interestingly enough, the fact that the Chachamim did not go ahead and object to Michal bas Shaul putting on tefillin means that they must have held that tefillin is not a time-bound mitzvah. In other words, we'll say, the only reason to pater women from tefillin is if you hold that it's a time-bound mitzvah. But if it's not a time-bound mitzvah, then tefillin is like any other mitzvah that women are michuyavos in. So the fact that the Chachamim didn't object to Michal putting on tefillin must indicate to us that tefillin is a mitzvahs aseh shalo hazman grama. That tefillin is a non-time-bound mitzvah. I think, well, how do you know? Vidilma, the Gemara says, Vidilma, Savarla, Amud Beis, Rabbi Yossi. I will say maybe the Rabbanon over here held like Rabbi Yossi. What did Rabbi Yossi hold? Da Amar Nashim Somchos Rishus. I will say Rabbi Yossi holds that halacha l'maisa. Now he holds it by smicha. So actually look at Rashi. Nashim Somchos Rishus. V'afagav dichsiv dabrel b'nei Yisrael v'amart aleim adam ki'akir mikem v'samach lei v'samach yado b'nei Yisrael somchim v'lo b'nei Yisrael. We'll say this is the din of smicha. Smicha is when you lean on a carbon. So when discussing about the concept of smicha before sacrificing it, the Gemara uses the lashon of b'nei Yisrael, right, which refers to men. So the mitzvah of smicha is a mitzvah upon men. Yet Rabbi Yossi says, as much as women are not obligated in smicha, if they want to do smicha, they can. If they want to do smicha, they can. Nashin somchos rishos. They're allowed to. Now Rabbi Yossi essentially is saying is that what? Any mitzvah that a woman is technically pater from, if she wants to do it, she can do it. In other words, she's pater. It's not pater lavalasar. It's just pater. She's exempted. So maybe the Chachamim. So remember, we were taking the fact that the Chachamim didn't object to Michal bas Shaul putting on tefillin as demonstrative of their position that tefillin is a mitzvahs aseh shelo hazman grama. That tefillin is a non-time mitzvah. I will say, understand, when you say tefillin is a non-time mitzvah, that means when does tefillin apply? When does tefillin apply? All the time. Weekdays, nights, Shabbosos, all the time. Gemara says, no, maybe that's not what it means. Maybe it just means that they saw Michal bas Shaul wanted to put on tefillin. Again, they held like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi holds that any mitzvah that a woman is pater from, as much as she's petura, she is still permitted to perform the mitzvah. Dilo teim hachi, because if you don't say this, ishto shel Yonah haisa ola l'regel, v'lo michuba. Because we'll say, think about this for just a moment. You know, in the same brayso, the Gemara quoted the fact that the wife of Yonah ben Amitai came and did aliyah l'regel, and no one objected. The rabbis didn't object. The Gemara says, Clearly, in that case, now understand, you want to have an argument about tefillin, that's fine. Everyone agrees that the mitzvah of aliyah l'regel is a time-bound mitzvah, is a mitzvah asay shazman grama. We'll say, you can't argue with that. Why can't you argue with that? Because it only applies 3 times a year. It's obvious. So we'll say, so the fact that we're grouping this together, the fact that the Gemara adds in Michal wearing tefillin and the wife of Yonah ben Amitai doing aliyah l'regel indicates to us that aliyah l'regel tefillin is kind of in the same parasha. So it's quite possible that what's happening over here is these are mitzvos that a woman is pater from, or patura from, because tefillin is a mitzvahs asay shazman grama. So why didn't the Rabbanim object? Because elakasava rishus, hachnami rishus. So they're exempted, and therefore again, and perhaps the rabbis in question held like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi holds nashim somchos rishus, that if they want to do smicha, they can't do smicha, and we would apply that ultimately again to any exempted mitzvah, to any mitzvah which is a mitzvah shazman grama, that if a woman wants to do it, she has the ability to do so. We'll say that this happens to be a fascinating sugya in general about women's relationship with mitzvos asay shazman grama. There's a little bit of a difference also here between Ashkenazic approach, Sephardic approach in terms of halacha lemaisa, but it is fascinating that the nature of understanding what it means to be pater, what it means to be pater from something. Does pater mean forced exemption and you can't do it? Or does pater mean no obligation, but should you choose to do it? Absolutely. So it's really, we'll have to add it to the list of shiurim that I have to cover one of these days. But all right, the Gemara says, Ela Haitano. Rather, the Gemara says, no. Rather, reflecting the following Tana. Here we go. The Gemara says, Disanya, Hamotzi tefillin, if one finds tefillin on Shabbos, Machnisin zug. Here we go. You can wear them in one pair at a time. Echara ish ve'echara isha. Wow. I'll say, look at this sugya. Look at this brisa. Right? You could go ahead, and even if a woman finds the tefillin, she could wear the tefillin in one pair at a time. Echad chadashas ve'echad yishanas. Whether they're new tefillin or old tefillin. Remember again, this is what we pointed out in the Mishnah, that there was the concern about that maybe it's not tefillin, but rather it's a kamiyah. It's an amulet that they made in the form of tefillin. So how do you tell the difference? You look if the ritzuos are bent or not, because they wouldn't make the knots in the kamiyos, they would only make the knots in tefillin. That's what it means. So whether the tefillin are new, whether they're old, they're a meir. So we'll say a meir pretty much holds that whenever you find something that even if it looks like tefillin, right? You're pretty sure it's tefillin, looks like tefillin, did have the knot, didn't have the knot, either a man or a woman could wear it in one pair at a time. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda ose bechadashos umater b'yishanos. Rabbi Yehuda holds that no. You can only go ahead and bring in yishanos. So I will say only if you know for sure that it's tefillin. And how do you know for sure that it's tefillin? Either it has the knots, or you can see that the ritzuos were bent in a way that clearly indicates that they were at one point in time knotted. But if the ritzuos look totally unbent or unknotted, you cannot transfer it in. Shabbos said the Gemara makes an amazing observation. Ad kan lo pligi ela bechadashos v'yishanos. The machlokes here between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda is only about transporting what we call chadashos. Aval bi'isha lo pligi. Shabbos, if you notice again, no one argues that a woman is permitted to go ahead and wear in a pair of tefillin. Shma mina mitzvahs asay shalo hazman grama. Rabbi say, here we go. Now the fact that a woman is permitted to go ahead and wear a pair of tefillin on Shabbos indicates to us that what? That women are obligated in tefillin. Now Rabbi say the only way they say that women are obligated in tefillin is how? If it's a mitzvahs asay shalo hazman grama, a non-time-bound commitment. The mitzvahs asay she'ein hazman grama, nashim chayavos. Ultimately, again, women are chayiv. To which the Gemara says, maybe not. V'dilma, again, savarla krabiosi da'amar nashim somchos rishos. I will say, maybe not, maybe this time, maybe what Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda just hold, they hold Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Yossi, excuse me. Rabbi Yossi holds, or as well say, you could still say that tefillin is a mitzvahs asay shazman grama, it's a time-bound commandment. You can still accept that approach. And even with that, you could be okay with a woman wearing a pair of tefillin inside on Shabbos, from outside in. Why? Like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi was nashim somchos rishos, which Rabbi Yossi becomes the mantra to mean anytime a woman is exempted from something, she's exempt, but she's still permitted to perform the mitzvah. So technically speaking, she's exempt from tefillin, but if she wants to perform the mitzvah, she certainly has the ability to do so. To which the Gemara says, lo. The Gemara says, lo. Sagadaitcha. The lo Rabbi Meir Savalak Rabbi Yossi, but lo Rabbi Yehuda Savalak Rabbi Yossi. Because we'll say, we know for a fact that neither Rabbi Meir nor Rabbi Yehuda hold like Rabbi Yossi. How so? Here we go. Lo Rabbi Meir Savalak Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Meir doesn't hold like Rabbi Yossi. This nan. Ein ma'akvin es hatinokos militkoa. So we'll say, interestingly enough, on Rosh Hashanah, we don't go ahead and prevent children from blowing a shofar. However, hanoshim ma'akvon. Now, both saying the fact that it says that we don't prevent children from doing it indicates to us that if a woman were to want to blow shofar, we would tell her not to. Now, both say, why would you tell a woman not to blow shofar? Because shofar is a mitzvahs asay. Shazman Rabbi says it's very interesting. You know, women are righteous. Nashtan said kanios. Women generally are very makbid on tkiyah shofar, which is a beautiful thing. But interestingly enough, meaning in its essence, it's a mitzvahs asay shazman grama. It is a time bound. It just shows you like how much a Jew wants tshuva. That whether I'm chayiv in shofar, not chayiv in shofar, I mamish can't miss it. It's such a beautiful testament to the Neshama. I can't miss it. But we'll say, but you see over here that halacha l'maisa, Rabbi Meir would say that again, if a woman wants to blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, we tell her not to. You shouldn't blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because it's a mitzvah asay shazman grama. Now, why don't you tell like Rabbi Yossi? It's true that she's pater, but if she wants to do it, she could do it. It's clear that Rabbi Meir doesn't hold like Rabbi Yossi. Ustam masnisin Rabbi Meir, and this Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi Meir. So we'll say that actually clearly shows us that Rabbi Meir does Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Huda holds Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Huda doesn't hold with Rabbi Yossi. How so? Disanya daber al bnei Yisrael v'samach. So we'll say, listen to this, because the Brisa says as follows: speak to the children, the sons of Israel, and they will do smicha. So the Gemara darshans, we'll say again, this is referring to leaning on the karban. Bnei Yisrael samchin. We darshan from here that only men do smicha, women don't do smicha. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon omrim, nashim somchos rishos. But yet Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon both say that while it's true, a woman is not obligated in smicha. If she wants to do smicha, she has the ability to do so. Ustam sifra money, and I will say when you see something quoted from the sifra, whose opinion is it reflecting? Money, Rabbi Huda. Ultimately, again, it's Rabbi Huda. So therefore, I will say what we've just shown is that halacha l'maisa, neither Rabbi Yehuda nor Rabbi Meir hold like Rabbi Yossi. So I will say, here's what we have. We have Rabbi Yossi saying, now I will say, I want to point out, Rabbi Yossi is not commenting on tefillin. Rabbi Yossi is just saying in a general sense that even when you have a mitzvah asay shelo azman grama, a woman is pater, but she's permitted to do it. We now clearly shown that both Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Huda don't hold of that idea. They don't hold of that idea. Neither of them hold. I mean, they hold that when ultimately, again, a woman is pater from something, it pretty much means like pater lavalasa, right? She's ptura, it's like a forced exemption. She can't do it. And I shouldn't say she can't do it. In other words, I want to say that there are limitations. We don't automatically say that she could just do it. It's a rishus if she wants to. But we'll say, so now, but what about the whole other machlokis in terms of tefillin? Right? So we'll say, so now we see again, so major machloksim. So first of all, one school of thought, tefillin is not a mitzvah shazman grama. It's a non-time-bound commandment. It applies all the time. Now, obviously, the corollary to that is both men and women then will be chayavim in tefillin. Fascinating. Second approach, tefillin is a mitzvah shazman grama. So we'll say now in this school of thought, there are two different ways of understanding why it's time-bound. One approach is it doesn't apply at night, applies by day, and which days? All days, including Shabbos. Second approach is halacha l'maisa. Again, Second approach is it doesn't apply all days. Second approach is it applies all days, but not Shabbos. And then again, in terms of night, that's a machlokes. We'll say, how do we paskin? So just very quickly before we go on. So the Torah says as follows. The Torah writes, this is in Siman Lamed. The Torah writes, Afagav de Kaimalon Laila Zman Tfilinu. We both say the way we paskin is that halacha l'maisa tefillin. There is a mitzvah of tefillin both by day and by night. The reason we don't wear tefillin at night, he says that the Torah writes, so Afagav de Kaimalon Laila Zman Tfilin. We hold that there is a mitzvah of tefillin at night. Yet the reason Ela she'ein morin kain. So we'll say, but yet we don't practice this way. So it's the halacha, but we don't practice this way. Rabbi say, why not? So the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Lamed Sif Beis says as follows. Because we'll say, ultimately, again, there's a concern that since at night people fall asleep. And when you fall asleep again, obviously you can't be vigilant about your tefillin, and there could be bodily processes that occur while you're sleeping. Therefore, we don't wear tefillin at night. So I want to point out, we paskin that laila zman tefillin that nighttime does work for that again, nighttime there is a chiyuv of tefillin. It's just from a practical perspective, we don't go ahead and act on this. So we'll say that's laila. Yet halacha l'may. So what do we paskin by Shabbos? Suppose this is just going to say in Lamed Aleph, Simon Lamed Aleph in Shulchan Aruch. B'Shabbos v'Yom aser lahaniach tefillin. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, it is aser to put on tefillin. Why? Shulchan Aruch says explicitly, "Mipnei shehem atzmam os ve'ein manichim bahem os acher." Because what says the Gemara just said, tefillin. The whole essence of tefillin is that it's a covenantal sign. It's an os. Shabbos and Yom Tov are their own os, and therefore, again, the os of tefillin should not be utilized on Shabbos. So we'll say, "Sahalocha l'maisa." We see tefillin is a mitzvahs aseh shazman grama. But why is it a mitzvah shazman grama? Ultimately, again, because it doesn't apply on Shabbos. It does apply by day. It does apply by night. We don't wear tefillin at night for practical. This is very important because remember, what this also means is, Shulchan Aruch paskins, if you're wearing your tefillin by day and the sun goes down, you're not obligated to take off your tefillin immediately, right? Because technically, it's just you can't lechatchila put on tefillin at night. So we paskin day and night, zman for tefillin, Shabbos, Yom Tov, not a zman for tefillin, and therefore tefillin, in fact, is a mitzvahs aseh shazman grama. Good Abba says, go a little bit weiter. Incredible case. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Lazar, hamotzi tchelas b'shuk. We'll say if a person finds tchelas, blue wool, blue dyed wool. Yeah, wool dyed blue. Okay, blue dyed wool. In the shuk, so let's listen to this. So the shonos, if you find strips of tchelas, psulos, then it's pasul. Chutin, if you find strands of tchelas, strings of tchelas, then ultimately, again, it's kasher. So when we say pasul, kasher means for use for tzitzis. I find tchelas in the shuk, I want to use it for my tzitzis. So the Gemara says, if you find it in larger strips, it's aser, you can't use it for tzitzis. If you find it in small strings, you are permitted to use it. Maishna l'shonos. So what's the problem of using larger strips for tzitzis? The amar adaita diglima tzav inhu. Because we'll say there's a concern, larger strips probably were dyed for use as part of a garment. Now we'll say the halacha is, for tzitzis, the strings themselves have to be spun, l'shem mitzvahs tzitzis, and the string has to be dyed, l'shem mitzvahs tzitzis, for the sake of the purpose of the mitzvah tzitzis. So if I find larger l'shonos, which we call strips, of wool, blue dyed wool dyed blue, then halacha l'maisa have to be concerned that that was really created to create a garment, and therefore I can't repurpose that for the mitzvah of tzitzis. But I don't understand, why doesn't that same thing apply if I find strings of tchelas? Why should I not be concerned that maybe those were dyed in order to go ahead and be utilized in a garment? To which the Gemara says, b'shazurin. So we'll say, because the strings over that you're finding is that they're twisted threads. We'll say, if you look at tzitzis, right? So tzitzis, again, is not just one single thread, they're twisted together. So I see threads that are dyed blue that are twisted together in the normal fashion in which tzitzis are made. To which the Gemara says, I don't understand. Shazurim nami nema adaita defsifsa degalima aifinu. So we'll say, even if you find pieces of twisted threads, maybe I should be concerned that maybe somebody made them to put them on the hem of a garment, to put them as the strip of the hem of a garment. Bimove sucking. They're shorter threads. They're shorter strings. So we'll say, essentially, because they're singular strings and they're short, they're not really made to be used on a garment itself. So if they're not made to be used on a garment, it must be that they were made for the sake of tzitzis. To which the Gemara says, because we're both say at that point in time, when you find small threads, people would not go ahead and create that for the sake of a garment, because we're both say that would be so labor intensive to use such a small, short thread for the sake of creating a garment. A person wouldn't do that. So the Gemara says, really? So we'll say, Rava says, you're saying a person wouldn't put in that amount of effort. Yet, would a person put in the amount of effort to make a kamiyah, to make an amulet that looks like a pair of tefillin? As well say, you can make an amulet, and you can make a relatively simple amulet. To make an amulet that looks like tefillin, right? A person puts in a lot of effort. So we see Rava says, people put in a lot of effort to do things that they don't really have to do. So he said, literally, would a person put in a lot of effort to make a kamiyah, to make an amulet that looks like tefillin? This none, medra murim. Because what did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said that when is this so? In other words, when can you carry in tefillin on Shabbos? Wear tefillin on Shabbos? Be yeshanos. That's only with tefillin that you know for sure. Tefillin, old tefillin, right? Where you can see that the straps were molded into a form of a knot. Aval b'chadoshos potter. Rabbi says, so you see from here, that's what? People do exert themselves for things that really have an incredible amount of exertion. So the same way that I have to be concerned that someone made an amulet that looked like tefillin, why not be concerned that someone dyed small threads of tcheles to ultimately be used in the hem of a garment? Why could I automatically assume people wouldn't be matriach themselves like that, and therefore I could use it for tzitzis? We'll stop over here. We'll pick up Emirat Hashem with this sugya tomorrow. Incredible daf. Incredible daf.